I'm going to go ahead and jump into what we're going to get into today, and we're going to be following up on. Oh, actually, let me share my screen. We're going to be following up on the part 2 of our workshop for our interview prep. So, like I said in our last workshop, I know that I've seen some new faces, so just want to do some more grounding so that we all have the same frame of reference. So, the interview process, I know some of you said that you're actively interviewing, you're applying. Some of you are still in a boot camp and getting ready to you're trying to get ahead. And I think that's the best place to be because we're definitely in this market that is the companies have the upper hand. So, we're in a space where we have to stay ready so we don't have to get ready. And this workshop is the first of many steps that you can take to do that. And so really excited to see you all here. So I want to quickly talk about like how to think about this workshop and just make sure people are focused on what our next steps could look like and how to think about the stuff that we're talking about in today's session. So we are building this as a foundation of how to think about interviewing, what does interviewing in tech looks like. So you want to definitely take this as, hey, we're learning concepts that you can apply in all of these different situations and make sure that you're ready to go for whatever interview process that you are a part of. So through our last session, we were able to talk about the job requirements. We talked about researching a company, interview formats, and we ended off on building your pitch. And so today we're going to jump into that part of the workshop, and then we're going to start talking about how do you discuss your projects and how do you show up as being a team player in the workplace. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to do an introduction because again, I am seeing some new faces in this workshop. So I definitely want to just say hello. My name is Valerie Phoenix. I'm the founder and executive director of Tech by Choice. I'm also a senior engineering manager. So a lot of the tips that I am giving are the things that I look for when I'm interviewing for people. You can find me on all socials as Digital BLK Hippie. That's where I am active on all platforms. Some fun facts about me is I don't like long walks on the beach. I like to just lay there, read a book, or take a nap. I have a weird looking dog, and she'll probably appear at some point. Either you'll see her throwing toys at me, or she'll just bark and scare me because I am a funny enough, very anxious person. The other thing is I've been working in tech for 10 years now. I am self-taught. I started out doing UX, moved to front end, and then went full stack. And now I'm in management, and I just generally love helping people make money and learning new things. And it's a big reason why I started Tech by Choice. If I would love to learn a little bit more about y'all in the chat, so feel free to drop your intro with things that you would like to share about yourself, future roles that you would like to get, and things like that, and just get the chat going. Make sure we're interacting with each other. And I will just go ahead to make it a little bit easier for everyone. I'm going to drop in the chat some details about what you can share about yourself to get your intros going. Okay. So to pick up where we left off, I'm going to jump to the screen where we talked about, what was it? Building your own pitch. So when we talk about building your pitch, you get asked the question of, hey, tell me about yourself when you get into the interview process. And throughout that process, there's a number of things that we think should go in your pitch, such as like a short introduction. You go into your professional background, some of the key skills and strengths that you have, your goals and motivations about why you are interested in the industry or the job or the company. And then you want to, you wrap it up with why you're interested in the company, but you can also tie that into your goals and your motivation of why you're passionate about this work. And that's how you really stand out with your introductions. We also talked about some do's and some don'ts about your interview process, answering the question of answering this question. And the thing that I think is the most important is we were able to go through this create your own pitch worksheet last time. And I want to see anyone from the chat, if anyone here that was here last time, uh, let me know in the chat so we can start talking about some of this. So this workshop or this worksheet is one that you can use to fill out on your own time to go ahead and craft your own pitch and make sure that you're getting all the details and everything like that. Hey Andre, glad to see you back. So Andre went through the workflow of going through and creating this pitch and having getting down all the information you would need to then craft your own pitch. So as a review, we went through this in groups and worked together to build out our own pitch. And once you come out of that pitch, this is what your intro could look like. This is an example of one that I want to go through. And this one is saying, hey, my name is Jane Doe. I'm a full stack developer and I've worked in the field for 5 years building skills focused on scalable web apps for startups. In my most recent role as a senior software engineer, I used JavaScript, React, Node.js, and I also worked on large-scale projects with a team of developers, ensuring that my work meets deadlines, and collaborated with cross-functional teams to define and implement new features. Throughout my career, I developed strong skills in full stack development, project management, and team building. I am particularly proud of launching a successfully large project that increased user engagement by 30% and implementing a new feature that reduced processing time by 50%, making it overall efficient. I am passionate about creating and innovating software solutions that solve real-world problems and enhance user experience. I'm driven by the challenges of solving complex problems and opportunity to make a positive impact through technology. My goal is to advance my career in software engineering with a focus on leading development teams and driving innovation with a forward-thinking company like XYZ Corp. I'm particularly interested in this company because of its commitment to innovation in the tech industry. I really love the fact that the company is using cutting-edge solutions that aligns with my passion for technology and my own personal career goals. I believe my background makes me a great fit for your team, and I'm excited for the opportunity to work at this new company. So, you see, it seemed like a lot of words, but this didn't take that long to work, to talk through and say. But what I do want to talk about is when you're looking at this template, I know that throughout our last session, there were some concerns about, hey, this template seems very structured, that it seems like if everyone starts to follow this template, won't we get these same answers? Won't we all see the same? Will we actually be able to stand out at this part of the interview process? Now, I think the way that we set this worksheet up, we made it so that it was flexible enough that anyone from any years of experience, whether you have 10 years or you're just getting started, is able to leverage this in a way that makes sense for you. The way that you want to look at this worksheet and make sure that you are set up for success is knowing your story. No matter how similar our resumes may be, our skill sets, or the things that we have done, it is the way that you tell your story that is going to make you stand out. For example, when I go to tell my intro, I like to say that I'm an engineering manager that has 10 years of experience in the industry, and I have spent the last 5 of those in senior leadership, and I've built my management style around servant leadership. And so you can see very quickly how just from that introduction, it's very different from the last one because of the roles and things like that. But I was still able to talk about the things that make me stand out and can align me to that role early on and get to the points of making sure I'm hitting the things that we've outlined that should be in a pitch. Now, you don't have to memorize this pitch word for word, but you do want to know your talking points so that when you're going to answer this question, you feel confident, you feel comfortable. And those are the different ways that you can go through. And as you're doing this worksheet on your own time, if you weren't able to complete it in the first part of the workshop, those are some of the things that I want to make sure that you understood because those are the things that we talked about last time. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about this part? Any questions about crafting that pitch or making sure you feel confident in the interview process with answering those questions? Also, thank you, Flex, for giving your introduction. It is so nice to know where you're at in your tech journey and being able to navigate that. All right. So if you do have questions, again, don't forget to drop your questions in the Q&A so that way it pops up for me. Okay, so let's jump into discussing your projects. A big part of the interview process is talking about what you've done. And so let's go ahead and break down how to talk about your projects beyond the STAR method. Now, the STAR method is something that I hear a lot of people talk about, and it is I think the right word is acronym that makes it a little bit easier for you to understand how to structure your projects or talking about your projects and what this could look like. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and results, right? But the thing is, if you look at this example, for your situation, you just explain what happened. For the task, you want to make sure you're outlining your role and your responsibility. And then when it comes to the action, you want to really focus in on explaining the steps you took to complete. You want to make sure you focus on the steps you took to complete the task and not so much of what it took. You want to focus on what you've done versus thinking about what it took to complete the whole project. And then when you look at the results, you want to make sure that you're talking about the impact and what that was like. Okay. I'm going to pause for a second because I am seeing that we have a couple of questions coming in. So the first question that we have, and this is about, so I'm going to go back a few screens because this one is about your pitch. So I want to make sure I have the right thing up as we talk about this. So the first question I have, how do you frame volunteer experience? I've experienced interviews in the past who were critical of it. Ooh, this is a good question. So when you're talking about volunteer experience, I think there's a couple of different paths that you can take. But when you look at the experience that you're talking about and you want to highlight, you want to make sure you understand how that volunteer experience is related to the company and the work and the role that you're talking about or you're interviewing for. So that way, as you're crafting your story, it's in line with what the interviewer is looking for. So, um, Miguel, I don't know if you're able to explain a little bit more about the volunteer experience, and then I can go into what it's like or how I can help you start to ground that and start to talk about that in the interview experience. Let me see. If you are in a space where you can come off mute, um, I can give you some space to talk. So just so it's easier for us to talk through this one.
Hello?
Hey there.
Hi.
Hey. So yeah, can you tell me a little bit about the volunteer experience that you wanted to share in the interview process?
Yeah, I think just for an interview I had in the past, we were like going over my resume from this, like, I guess example is this nonprofit called Landfest, where they do like local events to raise money for like local charities, like land parties.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess some of the stuff I do on there is like web graphic design. And I guess the interviewer was like, so who cares about the volunteer experience? I guess anyone can do it. So I was trying to like, I guess I was taken aback by his comment at the time, because it was for like a web like design developer position, if
Mm-hmm.
I remember correctly. So I guess that's it's like, how do you frame it? Like, I did some web graphic design for them, done some website maintenance, and I'm wondering if I should even have that on my resume, because I'm worried that might come up again in the future.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had that experience, but if I'm being honest and quite frank, I don't think that had anything to do with the work being volunteer work. I think that you got a really bad interview person doing an interview. Because that should not be the normal response. And tech has this stigma of being really bad at conducting and running interviews. And I think this is a really great example of how bad it can be and how it can just change how we think about how we show up in interviews and things like that. So want to just like validate what you're feeling like that's weird. It is. It shouldn't have happened. Like that is not a standard or a practice that should be repeated. But to answer your question about how do you bring in that volunteer experience in the interview process, I think the way that you were talking about it now is good. I say that if you're going to talk about your work, and I think if we look back at the screen for the STAR method, you want to still ground the volunteer work you do as if it was work that you were doing for a 9 to 5 that paid you. So in that experience, you were tasked with a design job to create a graphic that explained that shared information and got people willing to engage with the event. And you can say something about like the process that you went through to create the graphic, make sure you got alignment about from marketing or from whoever is like running the event to make sure things look as expected, follow branding and things like that. The design process that you went through would be follow in the action set of here. And then the results, you would say like, thanks to the flyer that I made, we were able to share it in X amount of spaces, and we were able to gather in X amount of people that came to the event, and we raised X amount of money. Um, So to me, if you told me that, I would be wowed because it's much harder to get people to show up for volunteer events, volunteer work for one. So to me, that reads that you're committed and this is something you're passionate about. And it's also skills that you are will be able to leverage in the workplace. And then the other thing is it tells me that you created something that was so engaging that people came and gave money to an event that you were helping put together. So that is how I would ground the work, and like from my point of view, if I was interviewing, that's how I would see it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. All right. Jumping into the next question. Um, and Miguel, I'm going to, if I remember how to do this, maybe I don't. Okay, I'm gonna figure this out. But jumping into the next question, um, oh, you no questions about the pitch, but the job requirements. I missed the first session and wanted to know how you would present yourself if you have a non-traditional background, currently attending boot camp. Thanks in advance. Um, let's finish the star method and then we can jump back to or actually we live stream the job requirement one and I can share that, but at the end if we have some more time we can jump back to that. But if not, I'll make sure to share the live stream with everyone as a follow-up. Um, and then we can go from there. And then like I will give you more advice on like how to talk about yourself from a non-traditional background. We'll spend some time on that as well. Okay. And that was for Andy. Sorry, forgot to start off with the name. Okay, cool. That was a great question and a great way to ground ourselves and get ready for this is actually a great example of the STAR method, how we just walk through how you can even talk about volunteer work and leverage the STAR method to make it all make sense and create a foundation or a framework that you can use to talk about your work that you've done. But like when I'm in the interview process and I hear people use this framework, there are still questions that I have. And so that's why I like to say that the STAR method is a good starting off point, but we can make this better. So if we think about what more we can add to give more color and to just really paint a very solid picture of your skill set, is to think of beyond the stars, right? So uh, you want to talk about the challenges and the solutions that you came up with. A lot of the times I'm hearing people tell these stories about how they completed this project and they came up with these really cool solutions, but they sound so cool and they sound so polished that because I'm not on that team, or maybe I don't understand the frameworks or the technology, I don't understand why it was so challenging. So you want to make sure that you're highlighting what was challenging, what were the difficult parts, and what steps did you take to overcome it. You also want to talk about the technologies used. So a lot of times people will talk about the projects at a high level, which is good because it gives me the opportunity to do a deep dive. But sometimes they forget to talk about just what language it was in or what framework, or if you're a designer, what was your design process? And what tools did you use to do all of these different things? So you want to make sure you're talking about the technology that you use as you're telling the story. The other thing is people love to understand growth. So as a manager, I'm looking to see how are you able to grow? What are the different ways that you learn and things like that? So what you want to do is make sure that you are sharing the lessons learned. You can say like at the end of the project, after completing the project, you learn that you can start to share your designs earlier with developers rather later, or you could say that you learn the importance of testing if you're a developer and things like that. Just showing different areas of growth that you've had within a project will help people understand one, that you're able to see gaps in the work that you do, and two, that you're putting in the work to grow and learn and advance. And the last thing I like to share with people is that when you're thinking of your different projects that you've had over the years that you want to talk about in your interviews, you want to make sure that you are grounding this and making it relevant to the role that you're interviewing for. There have been so many times that I have listened to someone who is doing very well in the interview. I even said yes, that I want to hire this person, but they chose a project that was not reflective of the work that they would do day to day. And it made it a little bit harder for me to give them a good score in that part of the interview. So you want to make sure that if you're going for a design role and the company is, I don't know, they're building design stuff for, what was that stupid friend.com, friend AI? Like if they're building hardware that is basically just listening to you all the time and texting you, you don't want to talk about designing enterprise apps, right? You want to talk about how you design something that was hardware related so that they can see that you have the skills that you need. No shade to those founders that made that little device. I just don't understand. I don't understand it. But, yeah. Okay. So we have come to our very first quiz time. And we talked about, since we talked about the different ways that we can talk about our projects, I want to, is this the team player? I actually, for this quiz, I know that there are some people who weren't here for our last workshop. So I'm going to try to do a throwback and let it also be a teaching lesson at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a question. So you'll be able to see this question on your screen right now. There are two questions. And we want to think about what an interviewer is looking for at different stages of the interview process. And to give folks a little bit of a hint for this one, because I know we did not, everyone wasn't here for the first part, and I want to go back a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and show some screens for the different types of interviews that I think will be helpful. So go ahead and answer these questions and take your time. And we will when we go over the answers for this, we will also talk a little bit more about interview process before we jump into the different interview phases, before we jump into the last bit about showing up as a team player in the interview process. This is interesting. Okay, we're looking for 2 more people to finish answering these questions. Oh, one more person and we get a perfect score, 100%. And in a world where we're not looking for perfect, we're looking for persistence. 100% is awesome. And we got it. We got 100%. Okay, let me go ahead and end the poll and I can share the results. So for the first question, during the phone screening, what is the interviewer looking for? So during the phone screening, the correct answer here is seeing if you're a fit for the company culture and understanding your work experience. This one is tricky because this is even at the last workshop, some folks put down in-depth understanding of the role of your role related skills. And so when we think about the interviews that people have at that first stage, people are usually just trying to make sure that you meet the requirements, that you are, if we go back a couple of screens to look at like the interview process. Wait, no, no, no. Where is it? Do you qualify this for this role? Okay, so if we go back to this screen, and this one is about being able to read a job description. They want to just make sure that you do have this information. So this is more or less like, I think I talked to, when building out this curriculum, I talked to a number of different recruiters, hiring managers, people who have navigated the job interview process being non-traditional or not having the title or level that they ended up landing within the last couple of years. And these are the themes that stood out, and how we were able to figure out if someone was qualified for a role, right? And so the phone screening is basically just this. They want to make sure that you have the right information, and they can get some of this information from your resume, but they're really going to be able to understand by having that conversation with you to make sure that there is alignment, that there is this cultural fit and the things that you're seeing here is what they're going to look for, and how you can also use that to start to filter and filter yourself for these jobs or prepare yourself for job interviews. And we'll get into that in a little bit more. So let's take a look at this second question. The second question is, during a cross-team collaboration, what is the interviewer looking for? So the correct answer for this is examples of how you communicated effectively, foster teamwork, and achieve a common goal together. Someone put down as a possible answer being how you push your idea was better than your coworkers from another domain. Now, this one could be tricky because there are times when you do have to show how you're able to push your ideas, that you're confident, that you are leveraging your skill set. But the key here is, because it's cross team collaboration, you want to do that in a way that is still being supportive and you're being collaborative with others, versus just coming in and saying, I have all the answers, let's just do what I say. And that's how this answer is reading. And so that's why the correct answer is focusing on collaboration and communication. So shout out to everyone who submitted this one. We all did really great. And I think this will lead us to talking about a little bit more, taking a step back and talking about the job descriptions, because I know that was an ask and we have time for it. So when it comes to job descriptions, there are a number of things that you can expect from a job description. But the first thing we want to do is ground ourselves in what is a job description. A job description is basically what will tell you if you're ready to apply for this job, and making sure that you're able to, if hired, do the work that's expected of you. So you can leverage and use job description as just like your first insight, like a high level overview of what is expected of you for the job, but it's also an overview of what you'll need to study for that job interview, and how to set yourself up for success after you get in, after you talk to these people, and stuff like that. So I also think it's important to point out that job descriptions can also tell you red and green flags. It's actually a lot easier to see red flags on a job interview than it is sometimes green flags. And here are some red flags to look out for. You don't want to to apply for a job that has vague job descriptions or responsibilities, or they seem unrealistic, like if they're asking you to be a ninja or a guru, any of those words to me are red flags, because I feel like that just means that they don't understand what's expected of you. So it's going to be hard for you to not only get things done, but it's going to be hard for you to navigate this in a way that allows you to have career growth, because it just won't be there. You want to stay away from places that only really emphasize benefits and perks. A great example of this is the startups that say that they have a ping pong table, and they keep talking about that ping pong table as if you don't need a 401k or healthcare or dental or, you know, things that you need to live, or an HR department, which if they have a ping pong table and that's all they talk about, they probably don't have HR, and you probably don't want to work there. And then, of course, looking to see if they have any negative language or demands. Uh, Anything that talks about working nonstop or pulling all nighters, or willing to um, not leave the office. Like, I've seen wild things that people have posted in job descriptions, and yeah, that those are red flags. So, what you want to do when you go through and you look at these job descriptions, you really want to focus on these elements here. And if you can answer these questions, you know that you are more likely to get past the initial screening, to have those first few interviews, and to get into that job. Um, So these are all in the slides, but I think these are really cool things to look at as far as it comes to job interviews, because our job descriptions, because that's going to help you really understand uh, interviews and the different things that they're looking for at the different stages. So these are common interview themes that you can experience at different phases of the interview. So keep this in mind, that like if you are looking at like a phone screening, they're looking for skill alignment, but the hiring manager screening is going to be making sure that um, you have the skills and you have experience through your projects to do well, and they're trying to understand more of your kind of like a culture fit. Will you do well with the people who are already on the team? Then you have your skills interviews. So these interviews are going to be either coding, if you're a developer, portfolio review, or some type of sales pitch assessment if you're in tech sales. And this is where you get to show off, like, hey, I may be coming from a boot camp. I may have 5 to 10 years worth of experience, but this is where I get to flex my skills and show that I know what's going on and how to show up in the workplace. So that's where you can show those things off. And that's when people are going to be looking for like your problem solving, your overall being flexible, and they're also going to be thinking and looking at your overall interviewing skills within the skills interview itself. Team members, cross team collaboration, company values, those are all going to be culture fit, and making sure that you can communicate, that you have those soft skills, those behavioral skills. Hiring manager, again, it's going to be just like checking in to see if you are someone who can really get the job done at this stage. This is where leveling and the actual like salary band placement is going to come in. Then you'll possibly have a chat with the founder or director. Then you'll get an offer. And then that's when you'll start the negotiation. Do not negotiate pay before you get an offer. You can go through and ask them to share the salary band early on. If you want to understand what the salary is, you don't have to tell them what you're looking for. I always suggest that people ask for the salary band instead, and tell them that, hey, this salary band sounds good to me. I am willing to give a more concrete number once I understand exactly what's expected of me for this role or for the company later in the interview process. If they ask you during like the phone screening or somewhere early on, but again, you do not start negotiating until you get an offer. You'll go through some type of background check depending on the job, and you then accept the offer. So yeah, so I think that Andy covers a lot of the questions you had about like the job description and stuff like that. Um, but I do see Flex, you asked a question starting out from a boot camp. I'm nervous about the minimum years of experience required. So that is something to be mindful of and understand that when you're just starting out, you're going to have to find those entry level jobs or a job that's looking for a minimum of 1 year experience and see if they would be willing to chat with you based off of your background, um, the experience you have or the work that you've done, the portfolio that you've built. I think it's at that stage, your first role, that is really, really important. Um, but let me see if I have. So, how much time do we have? We have about 8 minutes. I think I could speed through the team player, but I think the most important part is to actually address this one because we do have a few people who are in a boot camp with us today. And then we'll go a little bit over, if that's okay with people, to cover the being a team player. I do want to address how do you position yourself if you're someone who has no experience coming out of college or a boot camp, or maybe you're self-taught. So, in my experience, some of the things that I've done or that I did is before, I think it took me, to give you a frame of reference, it took me 1 full year of self teaching myself how to code to actually landing a job that had a paycheck. And so within that year, I think the first like 6, 7 months, I focused on just learning. So I know boot camps are about like 3 to 6 months long. So just give yourself first the grace to learn. And then as I started feeling more confident in being able to complete a project and do different things, I found ways to take on side projects and I started freelancing. I would take on work from like Fiverr, Upwork, Angelus. I think there was another website where I was working with like really early stage startups that would just wanted people to work for equity so that they were willing to not look for so much experience. That's when you kind of have to hustle and just find your way in with some of that work. And that was one way I did it. I went with like the Fiverr and Upwork positions because it was still a way for me to get some form of payment so that I can get the experience and put it down on my resume. I think the other thing that you can do is open source is a great space to be in for Tech by Choice. We do have a open source program that, fingers crossed, we'll be able to relaunch really soon, where we look for designers, developers, PMs to help us build projects, and that's another space that you can go into to try to build out your skill set. I have examples. My early portfolio had examples of things that I built in hackathons that actually help supported local nonprofits or small businesses. So there are different ways that you can start to, even now that you're in a boot camp, start to do that work for real businesses and start to build your portfolio so that you can start the ticker of like years of experience. But do know, even when you do stuff like that, there's still going to be a learning curve that first couple of months that you're in your new job. I want to say like the first 3 to 6 months, it's going to feel like you're constantly learning until you get a better just understanding or grounding on all that stuff. but those are different ways that you can kind of offset the years of experience needed, is by starting now while you're in the boot camp, start doing freelance work and just getting that practice. And then that'll better prepare you for when you're ready to go for those jobs. I hope that was helpful. Definitely feel um, free to ask more questions, and I will make sure I'm answering them and keep the questions coming in. Okay, awesome. All right, so jumping into our next section is being a team player. So if we think about being a team player, that can mean a lot of different things. And I think when people see tech jobs, they think that people who work tech jobs are recluse, like they don't talk, they have poor communication. Some of them do. Some of those things are facts, but it's not really going to create a great environment to work in if that is how everyone at the company is or everyone on the team is. And so you see people focus on and you see people advance are the people who are able to have more of those soft skills, who can be a team player and that can help others become unblocked. So what it means to be a team player when it comes to tech jobs is, like I just said, being collaborative. You have to understand that everyone's goal is to, everyone has the same common goal of getting the product to completion and making sure that it's working for the end user. And so you want to be able to show that you can be that team player, that you can contribute to the team, and that you can find ways to support everyone. So that way it's easier for everyone else to be successful and you can have a really good launch. And like I said before, like if we were all recluse, if all developers were the developers with the hoodies that never said anything, that had poor communication, then it would be really hard to launch anything, to work together to find a solution. So, and also, like, do you really want to go and work with at a place where no one talked? Maybe you would, because sometimes I think I would prefer that. But if that was the norm, it'd be really hard to get things done. So that's why when you're thinking about what does it mean to be a team player and why it's important, those are the things you want to think about. And that is also how you're going to figure out what are the interviewees or the people interviewing you are looking for. So the characteristics of a good team player is someone who is good at collaboration, they're reliable, they have good communication skills, they show respect when they're working with someone, even if they don't see eye to eye, they don't think that someone's idea is a good idea, but can you respectfully tell them that? And they are looking for someone who is adaptable. So, when you are thinking of the examples that you can share during your interview process, these are the key examples that the key themes and elements you want to add to your story to make sure that you are answering the questions of what the interviewers are looking for. They are looking for examples of collaboration, communication, when you were able to handle a disagreement, giving good feedback, which, by the way, is really hard to do. It's hard to give feedback that is constructive and that will help people grow, and being supportive. So when you're thinking about times that you've worked on projects in your boot camp, or uh, things that you've done as you like freelancing, or it could even be if you work at a company already, these are all the things that you can start to ways that you can start to think of talking about collaboration so that it's easier for the person interviewing you to understand how you can show up in the workplace. All right. So here are some examples of how this can show up in the interview for different roles. So if you want to talk about collaboration as a PM or a project manager, they often work with design and dev and marketing to align our product vision. So, as a PM, because you have to connect the dots between all of these different roles, coming up with a collaboration story around that is really cool. Um, Effectively running meetings is a really great example of being a good team player. So, as a designer, I worked with UX research team. I worked with the UX research team to run user interviews and usability tests. That's a great way or example that you can ground yourself in to talk about how you show up in the team. And then conflict resolution. This is, as a manager, I love when my direct reports show and build skills around conflict resolution because that's less work for me. And if you know, I think I read somewhere or read some quote or something is that the easier you make it for the person above you is the easier you'll have it for your role, something to that effect. And that's so true. And I think conflict resolution is a great example to show this because it is really touching on a lot of these qualities that people are looking for all in one because you're able to share what your goals are, share how you might have seen something different, but still come to a good middle ground and move forward as a team. Okay. Um, so I'm actually going to skip the quiz for this one, and I'm going to go to something more exciting and say we did it. We have gone through our workshop and we are one step closer to being that much more confident about the interview process and making sure that we know how to navigate these spaces so it's easier for us to hang out. Um, Oh, are we still doing the Twitter space? We are going to have a Twitter space where you can practice your pitch. We'll do some mock interviews and things like that. I will share that in the follow-up email because this was the one from last week that we had. Um, but so today we kind of went through everything except for researching the company. But we did talk about job requirements. We talked about interview formats, building your pitch, discussing your projects, being a team player, and just what it's like to navigate the tech interviews. So, since we have come to the end of this, I want to just go ahead and open up for discussion so I can answer any questions. I can answer any questions that you have about what we covered, any more in-depth questions about pitching yourself as someone who's coming from a boot camp or anything like that. And I will stop sharing my screen so it's easier for me to see participants. And what I'll do so it's easier for us to do Q&A, I will, sorry, let me find the screen. I will give everyone the ability to talk. So that way, if you have questions or if you questions or need feedback on anything, you can come off mute since we're done going through the slides and we can chat. Awesome.
Hello?
Hey there.
Hey, I want to ask a question.
Okay, go for it.
So should we have a list of all of the projects that we've worked on and then do our best to connect it with the job that we are applying for?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I think so the workshop so the workshop that where did it go? Not the workshop, the link to the building your pitch is going to have details about projects. What section is it? Key skills and strengths, goals and motivations. Oh, it actually doesn't have projects. Huh. Okay, but yeah, so I'm gonna update the worksheet to actually include projects because I thought I added it, but it might have been a different edit at some point and it didn't get into this one. But so what I would say is like you'll have like all this stuff listed out so you could just have ideas of projects that you can have. So let me ground this in an example. So when I'm going for a dev role, and let's say that it's a full stack role, I'll make sure that I have a example where I talk about me building something in React, me building something in just Python, so it's just full on backend, and then I'll have another project that talks about like me being a full stack developer doing front end and back end. And so that way, when I'm in the interview process and I know I need to talk about maybe front end skills more than back end skills, I just have those projects in mind with a couple like maybe bullet points that I know are my talking points. And that's how I start to ground it. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. That's a great question. Let me put that in my notes to update that worksheet. Um, awesome. Do we have any other questions? So glad that people are liking this event. Thank you for joining. This has been really cool. Any other questions about like how can you pitch yourself as someone who may not have that much experience in the workplace? Or does anyone I'm trying to make sure I answered all of the questions that came in for Q&A. Okay, Flex said that she would love more of that. Okay, so I think the key to standing out when you have let me think about this. The key to standing out when you're breaking in is going to be a cross between willingness to learn, passion. Why? And I hate saying that. So I'll explain what I mean by passion, but willingness to learn. You know what? Scratch that. It's not passionate. It's your willingness to have impact. It's your willingness to learn and your ability to show me how you can learn is what I'm looking for when I go to hire someone who may be more junior, right? So the best way that you can highlight that early on is one, make sure your resume is highlighting and connecting the dots early on for people. So you may not have the years of experience, but maybe you freelance for like 6 months to a year, and your projects that you've done in freelance are close and they mimic some of the things that you're seeing in the job description. So if you're a UX person and the job description is like, hey, we're looking for a junior UXer that is skilled in using Figma and doing user testing. You want to make sure on your resume that you have your projects are detailed in a way that it's showing that you know how to do that work. And then once you get from and making sure you have the other minimum requirements in your resume to get past that screening. Once you get past the screening, the next step is to make sure that you're showing your willingness to learn, that you're adaptable and all of that good stuff. And the way that you do that is with crafting your pitch. So if we go back to the slides, where do my slides go? I'm not sharing my screen. If we go back to the slides, and we look at the slide that is talking about building your pitch, you will see that there's a way for you to craft it so that you tie in your motivation and your skills very closely with the company. So a great example of this is the best pitch of like tell me about yourself I've ever heard came from someone who I think she only had like a year of experience, so she was relatively new to the industry, and she came in and she said that she um, was a career transitioner. She went from the medical field, like on track to becoming a doctor, to doing UX. And she said that she worked at a previous company, working on a couple different projects. And she talked about her key skills was iterating quickly on designs and being very user focused. And she said that she was good at that because through her time on going to becoming a doctor, she learned firsthand how hard it was for people in the medical field to provide the care that they wanted because they lacked the technology and the tools to do it. So they were always getting stuck using these old like software that just couldn't do what they needed it to do. And so she said that that's why she was passionate to work in the mental health or the healthcare tech space so that she could provide the skills that the doctors and the people she saw using it and that she tried to use, and why she was excited to work for this company. To me, that was mind blowing because she had industry knowledge that is hard to find, being someone who is technical and willing to work in the same industry that's building the tools that they would use, on top of her having the skills and things like that. So to me, like that's how you can make yourself stand out when it comes to interviewing, even if you're someone who has limited experience in the workplace. You can take the skills that you have from other spaces and still be able to leverage that and make sure that you are standing out. So I hope that gave you more like insight on that. Okay, Andy, you have another question. How can you make a student project look impressive? I think another way to make a student project look impressive is that you take it up a notch, right? So a lot of the projects that we see, they're pretty rigid. They're pretty rigid and have a good one, Flex. Thank you for joining. So they're pretty rigid, they're pretty standard, and we see a lot of the same projects pop up when you have student projects. So if there's anything that you could do to make your project stand out, look a little different, go beyond the basics of what was outlined for you, is going to make the project look a little bit more impressive. So the way that you can do this is, I think an early project that I had in my portfolio that I used to practice was building a diary app or a journal, personal journal, right? Because I like to journal. And so what I do, and I still use the same project now to learn a new framework or learn a new language, is I will build a journal app. So you have the standard functionalities of create, edit, read, delete, right? So I'm using the basic things to create a blog or a journal, right? But then I said to make it different and to make it so that I'm learning a little bit more than just the basics, is that I created this like mood generator. So like anything you write inside of the journal entry, it will turn it into a color, a bar that's full of colors. So if you use a lot of positive words, it'll turn into bright, pretty colors. But if you're using lots of negative words, it will turn into dark colors. So that helped me, one, learn how to process data, how to manipulate data, and how to store data in a way that you don't typically see in traditional tutorials. So that's it. That's one example of how you can take a student project or a tutorial project or a sample project and take it to the next level. You can get creative. You can figure out different ways you can add on to it. But that is my suggestion. Just take your projects, add on to it, and try to make what you're learning related to the role that you're going for. So for me, the journal app, I wanted to learn more about like databases and um, manipulating data. And I wanted to show people that I knew how to do that. And that was a great example to show how to do that. So that is one way you can go about it. And I think it's a good way to stand out in the interview process. So I hope that answer was helpful. All right. You are very welcome. Anyone else have any questions for me? Questions, feedback? Oh, I forgot to do the last thing. Before we wrap up today, and I know we've lost, a lot of people have left already. Oh, actually, not that many. This is perfect. The last thing I want to do is, we're always looking for feedback and making sure that we are providing a pretty solid experience for people when we run these workshops. So if you could take a moment of your time before you head out today and just go ahead and submit feedback for this session in the poll that we have, it will really help us optimize and make sure that we are providing content that is impactful. So the poll that is currently up, it has 3 questions. We'll keep it up for a bit and see if we have any additional questions that anyone has before we start to wrap up for today. And as we start to wrap up, again, I want to welcome everyone to join the Tech by Choice community. We have a lot of really cool stuff planned out. We have been spending also the poll has 4 stars for the 5-star option. Oh, thank you. I will update that. Me and my typos. But yeah, I do welcome everyone to join the Tech by Choice community. We run workshops like this and many others. And we're focused on making sure that people know that they can have a easier time navigating tech because it's our mission. We truly do believe that if we create a space that people don't have to code switch to ask questions, they'll have an easier time understanding what working in tech actually means and know that they can interstate and thrive in this space. And we're doing this because we truly believe that we should be living in a world where the companies should be as diverse as their user base because they know how to market it and sell to us. So why not have these companies be at diverse for when it comes to the people who are building and running them? I think if we lived in a world like that, we will have really cool solutions to some of the problems that we're seeing in our communities. And I would love to see all the really cool things that we can do in this space. So if you're looking to get access to mentorship, resources that will help you through your tech journey, access to a job board that's personalized just for you, and so much more, make sure you sign up to be a Tech by Choice member, when you join the community, you'll get access to our new website and our um, job board, where we have a personalized job board that has jobs just for you. You can find and add job referrals so that you can get that referral bonus. You can even start to submit reviews for companies, and we have this really cool company dashboard platform called Open Doors, and we are able to create scores based off of different feedback that people leave, so you can learn a little bit more about the companies that are out there. And our reviews are a little bit different than most people's reviews because we break down what is actually happening, who is leaving the reviews, so you get a better understanding of what it's like to navigate these jobs based off of your own personal experience. So the breakdown that we give is a little bit more than just people leaving comments, and this way we make it easy for people to truly stay anonymous and give honest feedback on these companies. As you can see, this is our test company. This is Chum Bucket from SpongeBob. So they are, as far as I'm aware, not hiring anybody in the tech industry, but this is how we demo our product. Okay. So with that being said, I would um, I would love to do last call for any feedback that you want to give about the workshop. Please go ahead and submit that poll. If you have any other questions for me, please go ahead. Feel free to come off mute, drop your answers in the Q&A box or in the chat, and that will be the last question we'll answer for tonight before we close out. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. It has been great. For those of you who are watching me on the live stream, really enjoyed hanging out with you. Thank you for the comments that you've left, the feedback, and I will see you all